Hello, Wanderlust Creatives. It's Galia here, and I just wanted to pop in and do a quick little bonus video on my Armchair travel sketchbooks, walk you through it, talk to you a little bit about what I did, and maybe inspire you to do your own travel armchair sketchbook. So I started this sketchbook in January of 2021. January is the time when I usually travel, and I really was missing that travel. So I decided to start a sketchbook from my photos. And the beginning of the sketchbook, I had the intention that I would sketch every day in January. Of course, that didn't quite pan out, but still, I made a valiant attempt at sketching often. And in this sketchbook, I had not many sort of like restrictions. I worked from photos that I had taken, and the main aim of the sketchbook was firstly to keep my hand in and to practice and to learn, but also to really try to explore different styles and different approaches so that I could sort of like hone in a little bit more my own style. So that was kind of like the overall sort of objective of the sketch journal. So here is like, this is the first one I did. It is a watercolor and pencil sketch. It's quite light. From the same location. This is from one photo taken further back, and this one here is a close-up. So it's got this lantern and it's shooting up there, so it's a lower angle shooting up. And so just very different styles. This one with the light pencil, barely can even see the pencil through the watercolor, so it's more wishy-washy, which I don't mind with watercolor because it's a little bit delicate. And then this one here, I use the Elegant Writer pen. I don't know if I've got one right here. I don't know that I do. Anyway, it's a watercolor soluble pen. And when you add water to it, when you wet it afterwards, it kind of splits into this greeny color as well as this purple color. And so you don't need to wet all of it, but where you do wet it, you can move the ink around to sort of create the shadows and give it some depth that way. Here I put a little bit of color into it as well. And I may have used just some other black ink as well. But this one was like loose and fast and almost like a almost like a contour drawing. Like I wasn't worried about proportions and accuracy. I was trying to be fluid, quick and expressive. Whereas this one would have taken me a lot longer to sort of like to sketch in all the details and to get it more correct perspectively and so forth. So playing with those there. This next one here is another one from Venice, but instead of using the pencil, I used pen to compare. Do I prefer my watercolor with pencil? Do I prefer it with pen? And I've got my color chart down here so I could see what colors I had used. And this again is the same subject, quite possibly the same photo or taken from the same place, just this one is cropped, the other one goes across the bridge. And I think I tried to stay again quite loose with the watercolors and stuff in this one. I like the skies. I feel like I found my way with skies through this process. I'm not sure with anything else yet, but I quite like the texture, and you'll see in some others I quite like the skies that I've created. Other things I'm still sort of like, see, I like this. I like what's happening in this sky too, even though it's kind of, and even this one. So these ones here are of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And I'm just using my pencil, only I'm trying to make my pencil more dominant than it was in this one here, where it's softer and it's paler and it's not as, it's very faint. So I've done the pencil sketch and then painted over the top. These ones here I sketched out. I probably used a little bit heavier line with my pencils and then went over them again once the watercolors were dry. So I can see that I've gone in with more detail with the pencils on top of the watercolor. And I quite like that depth. I like the looseness in these ones, and I like the particularly like the okay, sorry, I got interrupted with someone at the door. I'm not sure what I was saying. I think I was saying that with this one I quite like the loose sketchiness of the watercolor. Like I like the paper showing through a little bit more. It feels like it breathes more than this one. And that's something I've noticed throughout the book. So I'm trying to move more towards this than this, but it's hard. I tend to overpaint, so I'm trying to get that looseness, and I like the looseness, and I kind of like the darker pencil lines too. So that's nice. I like that. These two pages I was pleased with. Like, I like the result here. This is another one from Venice. Again, quick, fast, loose. This is just with my Lamy Joy pen and watercolor, sort of wet into wet, not really worrying about proportions, accuracy, staying within the lines, anything like that. This was just like a quick, get some expression and movement in and just play with being loose. And then contrasted with that, we have this one here, which is at Flam. Again, with the pencil, more detailed, trying to get the architecture right and the perspective and so forth. Oh, we've got a cat. Lizzie, what are you doing? Okay. Oh my goodness. All right. I wasn't happy with how the mountain, like these mountains, they look flat to me. So I wasn't happy with that. But, you know, just the practice of the perspective of the building and so forth. Getting in all the details of the windows and having some character there. I quite liked that. Probably would have worked better. I'm still working out how I'm going to approach these mountains still. Next we have an interior from Venice, a church, Maria del Santi Basilica or something, I'm not sure. So taken from the same photo, the difference being that one is more carefully rendered with the pencil, which took a bit longer. I did this one first, and then I did this one a lot faster and looser, and the paint went in faster and looser too, so it's more expressive. This is more detailed and a carefuler paint. This one took a long time to do. This one was quicker, partly because I was trying to be looser and so forth with the pen marks and so forth, but also the fact that I'd already done it made it, I was familiar with the subject already, so that made it a bit easier. And I look at these two, and there are things I like about both of them. So I'm not sure which of the two of these I prefer, but you know that we're still having that debate between pen and pencil with the watercolor. So this is a Cinecittà bar in Venice, and just in a monochrome, which I thought would work well because there was a lot of detail in this place. The tables, Cinecittà here, the bottles, I had to leave a lot out because there was a lot in this place. But I was interested in using the tonality of just ink. I quite like it. It's loose and wobbly and not worried about perspective or detail. I mean, this table here is a little bit up, and all of those sorts of things, my wonky glasses. I think that gives it character, so I wasn't worrying about that. And then I thought I'd try the similar sort of thing in color. which I don't think worked as well as in the monochrome study. But I still want to explore this sort of this idea of the detailed color rendering. I kind of like some of these where you've got the second layer and third layer of watercolor on top, so it's building that depth. But I wasn't happy with the buildings through here, how they turned out, and I don't know, it feels like it needs more somehow. Both more and less. That's a contradiction. But still, playing, trying, exploring. These two are from my trip to Thailand. This one here I did earlier in the year, and it never sort of sat right with me. And then later on I came back. I added these birds in, which I hadn't put in the original painting, but they are in the original photo. And that sort of weighted it a bit, and I added little bits of pencil work as well to just try and give it a bit more. It was just kind of, I don't know, it was kind of a combination of not detailed and rendered properly enough and yet not expressive enough. And I feel that here too, it's a similar sort of thing. I might actually come in with some more pencil work on this one even now, because it doesn't feel, it feels like it's on the fence. It doesn't have the detail or the expression or the careful rendering, or like, it's just kind of like, it needs more. So I might come in, I might actually try that with some, bring some pencils into here. I mean, all of this stuff is just, it's mosaiced with glass and different things, so I can bring some more detail into this, I think, with some pencil over the top. And that's the thing, you know, these are not in my travel journal. I can experiment, I can play. I don't care if I ruin this trying to make it better, because, you know, so what? I'm going to learn something along the way. It's a sketch in a sketchbook. It's an experiment already. And the fact that I don't like it gives me an opportunity to work out what don't I like about it and how might I fix it, make it more mine, make it feel more good for me. Like, it's a gut thing. I like it or I don't like it. It's not a judgmental thing. It's not a it's good or bad. It's a I like or I don't like. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So these here are some more sketches from Venice. This is from a photo that we took on our last morning on one trip, and it had the beautiful early golden light. Now, I don't know what happened when I did this, because I used my waterproof ink, and for some reason when I came and then added the watercolor paint on top, the ink took off. it ran everywhere, and I don't know why it ran, because it as far as I know, and for all intents and purposes, it was a waterproof ink that I use in all the other ones, and I don't know why it took off. But in the end, I don't really mind it, because it's given it this sort of like, it's created a mood and an atmosphere, and I don't mind that. I quite like that. It was very bizarre though. And this one here too, I used some ink that I knew was going to take off to make the shadows. It's not the Elegant Writer. I'm not sure what I did use, but it's not the Elegant Writer, because I can't see that splitting of the ink. With the Elegant Writer, it splits into the green and the purple, and this is very sort of monochromatic. And then I think I've sort of come over and done ink on the top, so I think this is probably with my Lamy Joy, but then also with a thicker pen for some of the details. I come in with some of the heavier bits with a different pen. And again, trying to stay loose and fresh and, you know, get it down. There's a lot of detail in there, and, you know, like to try and sort of make it make sense with this architecture, but then also to stay fresh and loose and not get caught in the detail. It's a balancing act. Okay, this is one I tried and I just didn't like. I was trying with the brown ink, and in the end I don't think I like the brown ink. I think I like the black or the pencil. I tried to bring some detail in to make it more interesting with some colored pencil over the top. Wasn't so keen on that. Tried to put a character to sort of like give it a focal point or a pop or something. Yeah, it just all felt like a failure, this one. But still, part of the journey, right? So some more with Venice. So this is probably what I did earlier in the year, and then I kind of got stuck with all the other things and came back to it towards the end of the year, and then was determined to finish it before the end of 2021. I think there's like maybe one that I finished in the first week of January. This one was a very sort of like a detailed one that took me a while. I like the water here. I feel like it's a little bit too busy and too much. I also think that one of the other problems with this image is the photo that I chose to work from, because it had flattened the perspective. So you can't really, in the photo, because I think I was standing right back and using a telephoto setting, this building here looks like it's on the same plane with this building. So it looks very flat rather than them having a distance between them, which is what your lenses can do on your camera. Your lenses can either push things back so they look like there's more distance between them, which is what a wide angle lens does. Telephoto lenses flatten things. And I think that was one of the issues with this. Like, there's beautiful detail and stuff to work with, but I think that was part of, I mean, you can't in this photo, and maybe if I went over it with like a soft blue glaze or something, I could push that back into the distance a bit, because your cool colors recede and your warm colors advance. So having that distance, like if you look in photos and you see the misty mountains in the distance, a little blue is the atmospheric perspective pushing them back. So, but yeah, if you just look at it like this, it looks like that building, which is at this angle, and then there's a canal that runs between these buildings, but it looks like they're just like, it just looks like a wall of building. So yeah, that's a perspective issue from the camera lens, I think, rather than from me replicating the photo. There's another one in Venice, and I quite like this one. I quite like, I like my sky again here. It's got that nice softness to it. It's blue, but it's also got this sort of this movement, and it's got the time of day in it beautifully. So I quite liked that. I think some of the pencil lines could be a bit stronger, but yeah, I quite like this one. Okay, so here, upside down, haven't we all done that, right? I hope we've all done that. Here I was just doing quick drawings, contour line drawings, and different things like that. Just playing with different ways of getting down what I was looking at. And I was going to do another one here, I haven't done it yet, with the Elegant Writer, and then, you know, getting that ink to move. But this is a great exercise to do often. Like, this is sort of like more rendered what I'm looking at, and this is more contour, just like keeping your pencil down, and here a bit faster and quicker and not really worrying. So that just like squiggly lines is representing what I'm looking at rather than trying to render it. And here, see, faster again on wonkier. You know, these gaps are quite interesting as well. With the open line, you have to double back a fair bit when you're doing a contour, and there can be gaps and things which can be quite interesting. So just a practice page. And next we have Basilica di Santi. Giovanni Apollo Venezia. So here I was really just exploring these little sort of archways with different media, just like I've played with the text and the font in the same way. So just trying to render it carefully in pencil and doing the shading and so forth. Here, quick and loose with black ink and watercolor, and trying to keep the pen work sketchy as well. And then two different pencil renderings. and different colors as well here. So that was interesting too. And also thinking about a spread and how to weave it all together. Here are some from the boat, from Flam to wherever it is that we went on the boat through the fjords. So here again, I'm playing with those mountains and the snow lines and how that would work. This is watercolor, but also with a bit of gouache on top, and trying to just stay mark making with the paint. And this looks like there's some pencil graphite under there as well. Lizzie, here we have a just trying to do it just in the graphite, trying to represent the tones but also the different textures and so forth. You know, even just doing these bit of grass, trying to get some of the shapes of the mountains in. I didn't even attempt the background here. So anyway, just playing a bit with that. It's a little thumbnail. And this is a watercolor sketch, and I think I've come over this with a bit of gesso or maybe gouache to try and bring that snow in. And again, trying to get that movement and capture that, and still that sense of scale and textures and so on with the watercolor and the layering of the watercolor. Some bits I kind of like. I like this texture on the water. It's kind of does look like the water that day. The shadows, silhouettes of the trees. And I'm thinking about the landscape in terms of shape and texture and trying to represent that with the color. Not sure how successful that is, but I definitely want to come back to exploring that further. And then I've gone into a series with in London, which goes over here, where I'm working with the ink and the watercolor in a more expressive way. Again, I'm liking my skies. They're full of mood and atmosphere. And I really like the purple in here, the way it's given the atmosphere it's created. Loose line work with the black ink. Relatively worked out with the perspective and stuff, but still trying to stay expressive with the actual mark making. And my little characters, trying to get some people in there for some, and here we've got perspective scale, which is adds some interest. Trying to do my cars. I feel like my car's got a little bit cuter over here. Like this little car here is so wonky. I just adore it. It's one of those wonky cars that usually I look at someone else's painted it and I go, oh, I love that. It's so cute. But when I do it, I think I've made a mistake. But I actually like it this time. I really think this car is really cute. And I think this car actually makes this image. I mean, the rest is interesting. Doesn't really do much, but that kind of brings it to life with its quirkiness. That in the sky. This, I think, is held together by the purple. Like the atmosphere created. So I quite like those. These are pretty quick and easy for me to do. I mean, not easy, but you know, like it's not fiddly. I'm playing, I'm being expressive. I don't worry if the colors bleed. I'm not worried about local color, and I'm enjoying and trying to, I want to bring more of that into my paintings, like not worrying about local color. That is the color that you're looking at to do more expressive paintings. Lizzie, darling, if you're not going to sit and be cute, you have to go. And then here's another one, Chinatown in London. Again, fast, expressive, not worried about, you know, the fact that it hadn't dried and the blue's taken off into the footpath. Probably need a bit more shadow on these people. There's meant to be people in here. The shadows under here trying to make some depth, but the pop of red to sort of like draw your eye. That was fun. Not sure whether it worked or not, but it was. And this one here, completely different, working from another photo from taken from the Tate, I believe, looking back to St. Paul's. This one was very much a study in greys and tones, in the different browns, and because these buildings are all pretty monochromatic, you know, and so I was trying to work out how, without copying every detail in this crazy layered scene, I could get the sense of the variety and still have a recognizable landscape. So we have the Millennium Bridge, we have St. Paul's, and some of these buildings are recognizable for what they are, and some of them are just creating that cityscape with the different details. So that was fun. It took longer. It took me longer to do these sort than to do the faster, looser ones, and again just with the pencil and watercolor. I think the black ink would have just detracted here. Here we are in Bergen. I wanted to try a doorway here, and I kind of like some of the textures created in the brickwork. I feel like maybe it needs some more pencil work to give it some depth. Like it just needs a little bit more to hold it, to anchor the image. And in fact, I might come back in and do that. I sort of wonder sometimes whether maybe some of it, like when you use the pencil, whether it needs fixing then, because I think sometimes it lifts a bit and it looks lighter than when you had originally done it. Not that I can see it smudged over here at all. So this one here, this is a really interesting building in Bergen. I think it's a Starbucks, but anyway. So I was trying to play with that, but again, this image is another one of those ones where I think we've got the issue of it being flattened from the lens I took it with. And again, not quite sure, I wasn't quite sure how to handle these trees in the background. Yeah, it feels like something's missing there. Some depth, I think, is missing. And maybe what would have been good is to do this darker as it is, and then maybe just do this very loose at the background so it has the focal point. I think sometimes I bleed out to the edge. I mask it off and I bleed out to the edge, and that just means there's like, it's just nowhere to sort of rest. Sometimes that works when they're like messy, because you know, it's kind of, I don't know, and sometimes it doesn't. All right, here we are back in Venice. Another quick one, not worrying about perspective too much. Here I was trying to play with the perspective because this is a complicated angle. You know, we've got a flat there and it dips back and then it steps and it dips and it steps, and then you go around the angle there and then this comes out. So I was trying to take that on but without being labored. And then having the focal point at the top of the roof. Trying to keep it loose still. Here is another one. I think that's flattened again. This building to this building, they look like they're on line with each other. In fact, they're not. This canal goes around there. But here I'm playing with the ink. I was trying to be sketchy with ink, and I don't think it worked here. I'm trying to be loose and sketchy. Again, I think it needs some space to breathe as well. So maybe if I had just penned this bit in and just painted the front or something, I mean, that might be something I play with in the next journal. Okay, excuse the noises in the background. The cat is digging in something, boxes of collage material or something. Here I thought I would take on some doors, thinking that if I found some images of doors, I would have that flat perspective and I could just, you know, that 1.1 sort of perspective. It wasn't any easier than say this building here, which is at a funny angle. It's got all sorts going on. There's just like, these doors have so much detail, and trying to get it all correct, it takes a lot. This one here is one I have done in another sketchbook from travel, so it was fun to revisit that a couple of years later and see how I could do it. This one here is taken from a photo that I took from the Vaporetto, so on the water, and I quite like some of these. Pretty colors and the detail, and It looks very Venetian. And I do think that it's muddied though a fair bit from the graphite, so I do think I should have fixed it. You can see it's smudged a bit. Maybe this one smudged onto it or vice versa. So I might look at that going forward, of having to fix things that have got graphite on them. Some more doors in Paris this time. It's playing with that focal point and those details and trying to, you know, get that looking correct, and how much do you need and all of that sort of thing. It's trying to stay loose here and a bit light. And then this one here, again in Paris. Here I have left these backgrounds sort of like not detailed, not painted so much, so that does let that sort of pop through a bit. Loose, not worrying too much about the detail, trying to get, like once I've got the architectural basis in, then I'm trying to stay a little bit loose. And here I'm practicing bringing out some lines and letting others be soft, and trying to get a bit of texture but also white space with the paint. All right, some more monochromatic studies. This one here is at a wine bar in Venice called Restigi. If you've been to Venice, you might have been there. It's well worth visiting. This barman, I forget his name, Giovanni, I think. He reminded me of the hippopotamuses from Fantasia. He was this big guy that just kind of seemed to dance around this space of the wine bar that he works in, which I assume is like a family handed down generational sort of thing. It's a very small little bar, couple of tables, lots of wines to try from all over the place. Like I just couldn't get enough wine bottles into this. And of course then also the different prosciuttos and some cheeses that would go with a platter if you wanted. And you could just, you know, try different wines by the glass and so on. It was very, very nice. But I was trying to, there was a lot of detail. I could not get enough. I mean, it would have taken me ages to fill out all the wine bottles that he had and all the glasses, like these layers of glasses and so much. So I tried to get in as much as I could. It was very labor intensive. I tried to create texture with the marks. So trying to get in the mark making with just the pen work and the hatching and stuff, I was trying to create both texture and tonality. So that was tricky to work out where that line is between what's texture and what's creating tone and what's doing both. So, but it was a very, very interesting learning curve. I learned a lot doing this, which I may not do another one in this style, but doing one in this style really taught me a lot, which will then help me in other sketching. So for example, here, the cross hatching in a particular direction to create the form and the texture. Here I've got the beam lines going one way and then the other way so that you can sort of see the difference a bit. The shading around the bottles to try and create form, but also these bottles are mostly dark. The texture on the clothing and so on the cylindrical things, trying to make them cylindrical. And just, yeah. This one here is with black ink, trying to stay relatively sketchy with the black ink. And then using black ink washes to bring some tonality in. So there's a little bit of mark making with the pen work to give a bit of texture, to give a bit of tone and texture, but most of the tone is coming from the ink wash, and I kind of like that. I don't know whether it's my photographic background that makes monochrome so appealing, but yeah, I kind of liked the way this one turned out. And also it's picked from a photograph which is kind of graphic in the first place with the composition with this bridge and so forth. And I feel like if this had been in color, you would have lost the graphicness that was created by the angle and stuff. But again, a lot of little details took quite a while to render. So that inspired me then to try this painting here, which you've probably seen in my Parisian sketchbook. This is the view from my favorite cafe. This is not my favorite cafe because I'm sitting in my favorite cafe. Looking at the cafe across the way. So a monochromatic one with the ink work again. But I thought I'd try a pop of color to see what that's like. And I don't mind it. I quite like this monochromatic approach with the ink work, and I'm probably going to do a fair bit of that going forward. It suits the way I like to work, which is both detailed and loose. Like I kind of like to do some detail, but I'm not patient enough to do it all. And there's something about this that too kind of amuses me because it looks like I have a photographic background that goes way back to analog film and dark rooms and stuff like that. And this kind of reminds me of when digital first came on, and you'd see a lot of this sort of black and white photo with a pop of red or something. I mean, gosh, there's probably photos out there exactly of this cafe that are digitally treated like that. So it's kind of, it amuses me. And then this one here, same, working from the same photo. And you can see just even in that, working from the same photo, how the perspective and the shapes is a little bit different and wonky and whatnot. How to handle winter trees, that I'm still working on, because usually when I travel it's January and it's just branches. It would be so much easier when they're covered because you can do foliage. But yeah, so I kind of like this one that it caught the golden light. Photo was taken at the golden hour. Light rain, but with the sun coming through. The sun had dropped down below the cloud cover, and it was just beautiful. And so, you know, it's not very defined, or it's kind of loose and light, and I kind of like it. It kind of captures an atmosphere. And even just these shadows really anchor it. You know, that one I said earlier, it needed stronger shadows. They kind of dried lighter. The shadows really anchor things a little bit. Okay, and dried lighter here too. I probably should have gone over that shadow again. You put them down and then the ink is just like watercolor, but even more so, it dries a lot lighter. So you kind of build up the layers. Here is one where I was trying to stay pretty loose with my pen work and painting and so forth. There are things I like about it and things I don't like about it. I think that what I've taken away from this spread is that there's just, again, like I've said a few times, and it was probably when I hit this one that it kind of really hit me, there's nowhere to rest. I think that if I had just inked this building here and left it black and white and just painted in this strip here, it would have worked better. But of course, these buildings are beautiful colors. They've got orange and they've got all that beautiful texture and they've got the green shutters. And it's like, who doesn't want to put that down? But as an image, I think that if I had left that and just had this strong focal point, it would have worked better. So things to think about. Quite like this wonky line I've put around the outside too. That's helped weigh it down. And I really come in quite heavy here with the shadows, with a like a calligraphy pen. Have I got it here? It's almost like a Sharpie, but it's not. It's one of these Pitt pens, but the calligraphy one, I think, or a brush one. Could be a brush Pitt pen. And it adds the depth and also expressive lines. So I think that helps to anchor it. But yeah, I just think you need that rest. And you could still have all the detail there with the ink work, but just, you know, the color is just too much. Okay, so now we are back in Paris. Again, see, I'm enjoying my skies. This is the Petit Palace, I think. With both of these, I'm trying to be very loose and sketchy with my ink work. So using the ink, but not in those heavy sort of lines, whereas these ones feel more like outlines. And some of these I went over once I put the color because it just all got lost. So they're quite heavy. Whereas here I've tried to stay loose and open and sketchy with my ink lines. And I think that works quite well. And again, loose and sketchy with my paint as well, like letting the colors mingle and bleed into each other, leaving the open white gaps to let light hit the building. And then here, you know, a bit of foliage to sort of like anchor it. That was quite interesting. Like I wasn't sure how I was going to attack all the greenery, that it didn't just look like a blob of green, but there was some definition. I was quite pleased with how this tree turned out in the end. And for these, I just do like squiggles. Like I'm quite happy to just like let the brush do pattern making rather than trying to draw foliage. This one here was on a snow day in Paris, and I wanted to try and see how I could capture the snow in the watercolor. So I did a bit of masking tape, masking fluid. I put some of the branches in first, so with the snow, and just a little bit of masking fluid where the snow was piling up a bit, so that would protect those areas. I don't think there was a lot on the building. And then I splattered little bits so that we could have it looking like there was a little bit of snow falling. And then again, very sketchy with the ink and pretty loose with the paint as well. And then painting those branches sort of like next to where I'd already put the masking fluid to give them the definition and help them stand out. I don't mind it. I think this one worked out relatively well. And even just these little splashes where I've obviously gone to wash my brush or something and dripped. I kind of like that. This was another, just trying to like be bold with color and expression, and so making the red very dominant again, like in the cafe, and letting the pen work be sketchy, like this wonky shaped lanterns and buildings and things. Like I'm not really worrying about accuracy. I'm allowing it to be wonky. And here, having done this one after this one, see, from this one I've gone here and I've really lightened up my ink work because that was just a bit heavy. And then I've gone from this one to this one, and I've created more of that focal point. I kind of like the contrast between the red and the blues and those sort of complementary colors, but I've tried not to overpaint these other areas so that the Moulin Rouge can really pop. And I've allowed this like to fall out of the frame and be wonky. I mean, that's so much that should have been longer, and you know, like I'm not worrying about those things. I'm trying to keep it loose still. And I think I put a little bit of gouache over the top of these, and like a Posca pen for to bring back some of the white. Another building, doors, 2 more doors. This one in Paris. This one here, I was trying to, like, it was a stone building with a lot of texture. I like the way I've kind of, as opposed to this one, which we'll get to, how it doesn't go to the edges. Some of the details lost in there with the pencil, so you need to really sort of bring it out. I did washes and created some texture. What I did here is I did this really careful rendering, but I did it relatively light, and then I came over and did my first wash, and then I couldn't see the rendering at all, and I had to redraw it completely, and I didn't draw it nearly so carefully the second time. Maybe because I was already familiar with it, and partly because I was just like, I was kind of a bit over it. But so it's not as carefully rendered as it had been, but there's a lot of detail and stuff, and there's like not much going on color wise and so forth, just the door contrasting with the building. But I wanted to capture some of the texture and some of the pattern of this and of the architecture. And then this one here is Sweden, a restaurant in Gamla that we ate in one night. And I don't know whether it's partly because it just goes to the edges or it needs more, it needs a focal point. So I probably need to come in and do some more line work in this area to give it more of a focal point. But at the moment, it just looks wishy-washy to me. I think this is the one I finished just in the beginning of the year. So I think I need to, I don't actually think I finished this one. I think this one needs me to come back in with the pencil just to bring out some of these lines and details and allow it to have a focal point with a little bit more contrast. Even some of these could use a little bit more depth in the pencil work. And that's it. So then what I did is I just went through it and made notes on the different pages, things that I had taken away, which is pretty much what I shared with you today anyway. And I covered it with some beautiful paper from a trip to Venice. And there you go. That is my travel sketching from 2021. Hoping that soon I will get out and actually do travel sketching around the world. It's 2022 now, and it doesn't look like we're going to get anywhere in a hurry, but I'm going to keep doing this. I have some ideas for starting a couple of other sketchbooks after this. There's a few things I want to play with. One is scale, because I sort of did mostly one page, except for a couple of double spreads. And in a sketchbook, I'm often working smaller. So I want to play with that. I also want to play around with different formats. This is a sort of like a vertical sketchbook. Most of the sketches are vertical. Quite often landscapes are horizontal, or sketchbooks are horizontal. So I thought I might try some sort of horizontal panoramic sketchbook. And the other thing I wanted to play with was a little bit along the lines of, where is it? This kind of, you know, creating a spread rather than just a page. So they're the things I'm going to keep working on. And I think rather than just having one sketchbook like I did for 2021 for my travel sketching, I'm going to start a couple of different sketchbooks where I do different sorts of things in, as I've just mentioned. Okay, my dears, I hope that is interesting and useful and inspires you to keep doing your own travel sketching, even if you are not traveling. Because I think it's really important that we practice. Practice is important if you enjoy it. I find these things, some of these take me quite a while to do, but they're quite meditative. And I'm often just, you know, I'm sitting at the kitchen table or in the courtyard, if there's a spring day, not that there's been many with Alena. And it's a pleasurable thing to do. It's kind of like a hobby I do when I'm not doing my art, if that makes sense. It sounds funny, but so I enjoy it, and I think that the more I do it, the better I'm going to get at it, the quicker I'm going to get at like rendering these complicated architectural things, but also in terms of finding my style and getting more fluent in my own style. Already, like, I've taken away a lot of things just from this that I'm going to take forward, and some things that I'm going to lose. All right, my dears. Bye.